Times Influence Initiative.
Hello and welcome to the 4th edition of Times Network's India Economic Conclave, presented by Capital First, Partner in Progress, Gabon Special Economic Zone and powered by Raven. Now, last week's episode featured an insightful session on bridging the gender deficit with the Minister of Textiles and Information and Broadcasting, Smriti Zubin Irani, and the Chairman of Max Financial Services, Naina Lal Kidwai, in conversation with Times Now's Navika Kumar. This was followed by an insightful session between the CEO of Niti Aayog, Amitabh Kant, and the worldwide Managing Director for Bain Consulting, Manny Maceda.
Let it not be misconstrued that if we want reservation, it is only because women feel they are disenfranchised or feel that I'm from, let's say, a poorer strata of society. There are many well-read, professional women who might not get a chance if not for that reservation.
For many of our global companies, the priority of how to serve, participate in the great hope of the Indian consumer.
Next up is a special session called the Big Change Agents, where bureaucrats who are toiling hard to solve some of India's biggest problems, from its economic affairs to ease of doing business to sanitation to skills, will share their ideas and answer some key questions posed by ET Now's Supriya Srinate. First up on the dais is Subhash Chandra Garg, Secretary of the Department of Economic Affairs, followed by Ramesh Abhishek, Secretary with the Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion. Let's take a look.
In 2005, our economy was of the order of $600 billion. Today, in 2017, we just finished, we are entering in 2018, we are $2.5 trillion. We have grown 4 times in 12 years. All it takes is again to grow 4 times in next 12 years, and 2030 we would be $10 trillion. So it's not something which is unachievable, it's very much achievable. Now, then we come to the question that where are we now? Are we ready? Do we have enough? What does it take to reach to that goal of 10 trillion by 2030. My sense is that today we are in fact in a far better situation to achieve this goal than we were probably in 2004-05. India today is an economy, India today has a government, India today has the people, the entrepreneur, which makes it very much able to do that. Let me say how. What does it require? We need to have a macroeconomic stability. Do we have the right conditions for the macroeconomy to function? I think today we are at a stage where our macroeconomic fundamentals are absolutely first rate. They are very good. You look at anything, any parameter, you look at the growth, you look at inflation, the foreign exchange situation, government fiscal deficits, government finances, export-import situations, current account, anything you look at it, our fundamentals are very secure, very much there, which will ensure anyone who wishes to make investment, who wishes to try its luck in India, to take a call on making investments and to get it go. What is very much needed is for everyone in the system, the investors, the entrepreneurs, the people, to get excited and to have right kind of conditions for this to happen. And that's again what we see is there. There's sometimes it's mentioned that our investment rates have gone down, but that's not a major cause. We still have investment rates which are very high. The global economy situation is changing. You don't require that much investment to generate that kind of output today. But again, the fall which we saw in some of the investment indicators in last couple of years was largely concentrated in the housing sector. That is where which affected our investment substantially. In statistically, it's about 4 to 5% investment rate decline is explained by the housing sector decline. That is changing again. That's changing for the better. So to conclude, I think all the conditions which are necessary for creating foundations and for allowing that economic growth to generate are there. Let's all work and make sure that we have a $10 trillion economy and a very inclusive economy where everybody shares this growth and we become that kind of economy by 2030. Thank you very much.
You said $10 trillion economy is very doable. The question really is that the PNB fraud that one did see has had its share of collateral damage. Bankers are very wary of lending. There is credit freeze in the system, it seems. The system is at the risk of being jammed. How concerned are you about that, and what sort of an impact can this have on the overall growth figures? I mean, Goldman Sachs, for instance, has lowered India's GDP growth forecast for fiscal year 19. I'm presuming that's a concern that a lot of people in this room share.
That's absolutely right, that part of the banking system, especially the PSBs, and some part of that PSB is not actually contributing for some time in credit markets and growth. But that is what is compensated a whole lot by what I mentioned, the growth in the capital corporate bond markets, the non-PSB banking space is doing well, the inflow of finances is very right. So I would have thought this would be much better if the PSBs are also participating in that growth story. But despite that, we will also achieve. But we will try to make sure that the PSBs also participate in that story.
On that very optimistic note, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Ease of doing business as such was not much of a subject till end of 2014 when government decided to do something about it. And in last 3 years or so, we have tried to figure out which are the areas where we need to improve. The laws, procedures, time being taken, using technology, changing mindsets, orienting our staff at the cutting edge level, all that we have tried to do. And of course, it's a very much work in progress. Whatever efforts have been made in the last 3 and 3.5 years shows some of the improvement that we have made in the global indices. This Logistic Performance Index basically is an assessment of foreigners about how goods are moving within the country beyond the ports. World Economic Forum also ranks countries on competitiveness. There also we have made a considerable improvement. And of course, World Bank Doing Business report, we made a dramatic 30 rank jump last year. Our rank was 142 in 2014. It's gradually improved and now we are at 100 and definitely hoping to be 50 in the next 1 or 2 years. You know, in some of the reforms that we have done, resolving insolvency has been a major improvement, and that actually improved our rank by 33 this year. Again, paying taxes, this employee state insurance and employee provident fund, this entire thing has been made electronic. These are all related to starting business. We found that we had almost 26 days to start business in India as per the World Bank Doing Business report. There were 14 procedures. So we one by one we saw how we can cut down the number of procedures, time being taken, cost of doing those things, and of course the quality of the index. And similarly, in the reform that we have done on ESI, EPF, we have made a lot of dramatic improvement in the last 1 year. So I think I should stop here, and maybe if there are some questions I can respond.
If I may ask you, which are the states that put maximum pressure on you, and where are they going to rank this year?
See, if you see our website of Business Reforms Action Plan, there are 4 states which have got 100% score actually. And there are 18 states we have got more than 90% score. If you compare with the previous years, this is amazing. Last year, the 2 of the very more developed states actually were the top 3 actually. Today, none of those 3 are in the top 4 so far. But this is going to change because the respondent feedback is being taken. Once that is factored into the overall evaluation, well, that may change. But I think the amount of competition, the amount of learning from each other, we have actually tagged those states who are not performing well with those who are performing well. It's amazing cooperation between states. When we thought of this 2 years back, we thought that those who are not doing so well would not like to be helped. Because you feel that, come on, even individuals don't like to say that we are weak and we want to be helped. But the states were very eager, actually. So I think this cooperation among states, working together, learning from each other, has been pretty impressive.
A lot of Indian businesses that you speak to complain that while the government is rolling out the red carpet for foreign direct investment, it's not such a rosy picture for Indian investors, not the Indian businessmen. You are changing the rules of the game and making it perhaps tougher and, changing the rules of the game every single day to make it cleaner, more corruption-free, yes, but it entails tougher environment to do business in.
Supriya, I think everyone here will agree that difficulty in doing business affects the MSME sector far more than they do the larger companies. Whatever work is being done on ease of doing business actually helps the MSME sector far, far more. So I think there we must make this distinction. The larger companies, whether Indian or foreign, they have a much bigger bandwidth in terms of negotiating our very complex system. So far as the foreign investors are concerned, see, we want investment in the country. So we are trying to provide a regime that is friendly and that is welcoming of foreign investment. But the amount of work that we do with our companies, of course, our companies are our companies. The policy advocacy that we do, the interventions that we do to help them, their specific issues, is enormous.
All right. On that note, sir, thanks very much for speaking to us.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much, sir.
It's time now for a short break, and on the other side we have two more bureaucrats talking to us about the changes being brought about to solve India's problems. Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back.
There is a huge amount of unskilled raw labor in the form of school dropouts, in the form of kids who need training. The question that one needs to then ask is, why is there not a natural market for skill acquisition in India?
Welcome back to the India Economic Conclave, presented by Capital First, Partner in Progress, Gabon Special Economic Zone and powered by Raven. Now our next speaker is someone who has taken it upon himself to bridge the deficit that hurts Indian industry, the Secretary of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, KP Krishnan, followed by Parmeswaran Iyer, Secretary Drinking Water and Sanitation. Let's listen in.
There is a huge demand for skilled labor in India. I'm sure if people of business and as experienced sort of people in the areas, I don't need to drive home this point. There are a number of studies which tell us that the incremental HR of skilled workers required, this is an estimation of 2012, updated in 2016, and the numbers are something over 100 million incremental skilled personnel required for a decade. We may quibble about the exact number, but I think the short point is there is a huge demand. Equally well established is the fact that there is a huge amount of unskilled raw labor in the form of school dropouts, in the form of kids who need training. The question that one needs to then ask is, why is there not a natural market for skill acquisition in India? The short answer is, this is something which has been ongoing since the beginning of the 5-year plans. India established the first of the industrial training institutes going back to the 1950s. The current scenario is something like 14,000 plus ITIs and a large part, close to 85% in private hands and something like 15-16% run by state governments. These ITIs are entirely run by state governments, and if one were to sort of crudely summarize what you're likely to find in an average ITI, the situation is likely to be a governmental ITI reasonably well endowed in terms of land, in terms of building, in terms of original labs and equipment which were state-of-the-art when they were established, but fallen behind times thanks to the usual pathology of government. typically large number of instructor vacancies, but the ones who are in position are likely to be very well qualified, oftentimes overqualified, but with very poor or low levels of motivation. I'll conclude here. In case there are questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Krishnan. The government recently scaled down the target to skill 500 million people by 2022 to 400 million. What was the rationale? Was it too big a challenge? Is there a more realistic assumption now?
No, the government, did not have a target. What you're talking about is the estimated requirement which was mentioned in the skilling policy, the first policy of 2009, and a subsequent policy of 2015, which talks about what is required. It doesn't talk about what will be achieved, because the government funding is a very sort of small part of this whole thing. So it isn't a target that you're talking about, it is what was the estimated numbers.
Fair point. One more question, sir. One of the suggestions that keeps coming from Indian industry when they're in conversation with us is that why are we not looking at innovative models of skill development? Why are we not moving models, hubs of skill development closer to hubs of industry? You know, an auto hub in Chennai and Pune, why don't we move skill development there? Is that something that's on the government's radar, and will you be open to something like this?
This is nothing innovative. Every ITI in India, if you go back to the 1950s, was located right in the heart of an industrial hub. Every state government ITI in Bengal is located right next to the then leader of India's industry, namely a public sector, along with ancillaries. And a large part of India's skilling ecosystem on the industrial side continues to be located close to industry. But if you require, the largest gap in India's skill gap is not industry, it's construction workers. Where do you locate construction worker related sites? You don't locate them next to a construction industry because you need large numbers. So I don't think the answer is as simple as that. But innovative skilling systems, there are plenty. But our difficulty is that is not yet the average. That's still the outlier.
Thank you very much.
So let me just take you through our sanitation revolution, as we call it, the Swachh Bharat mission. So by our reckoning, this is the biggest behavior change program ever attempted. And that's really at the heart of this program. It's about behavior change. And since this program started, was launched by the Prime Minister in October 14. If you look at the numbers are pretty big anyway. So there were about 550 million people, or 55 crores, who were practicing open defecation when this program began. Over half of the people around the world who practice open defecation. And that number today has come down by about 35 crores. So today we have 200 million people only who practice open defecation. Still a very big number, but I think there's been a big shift in behavior. So we're doing sanitation, but the idea of shifting the behavior of so many people is itself a huge idea. And so we try to compare it with, to use management jargon of a big, hairy, audacious goal, which in Hindi is bhag, which means to run anyway. So I think we are running. And when President Kennedy said that he'll put a man on the moon in 10 years, everyone said, wow, that's a huge idea. And we think it's a much bigger idea put on the table by our Prime Minister in 2014, where he said that we're going to change the behavior of 1.25 billion people in 5 years. So for us, the Swachh Bharat mission is a much bigger bhag than anything President Kennedy mentioned, but it's a very, very big idea. So the idea itself needs to be appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Iyer. And I think it makes ample sense to have a clean India because it also means a more prosperous India. But you mentioned it towards the end of your presentation. Has the toughest part of Swachh Bharat mission been a change in mindset? We've had instances where toilets, yes, have been created, but are not being used in rural India, perhaps being used as go-downs. Has that been the toughest part, the change in mindset really?
Sure. Look, we all know that these are deeply ingrained habits, and changing that is not difficult. The good news is there's been a lot of experience in India and around the world on how do you trigger behavior change. And we have had a lot of international experts working with us as well. But most of all, we have had ordinary people in India who understand the importance of sanitation. So one challenge has been to scale up behavior change. When you're dealing with such a massive program, how do you do it at scale? So we have used technology for this. We have done virtual classrooms. We have done capacity building at scale. We have empaneled a number of organizations.
On that note, sir, thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you.
That's a wrap from this episode of the India Economic Conclave, but we'll be back next week with an insightful session with the Union Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas and Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Dharmendra Pradhan, in conversation with Times Now's Rahul Shivshankar. Goodbye for now and many thanks for watching.
Today, India is the number 3 energy consumer in the world. After the United States of America and China, India is the number 3rd country. We have surpassed Japan. Another bare fact, our per capita energy consumption is one among the lowest in the world. The way India is changing, the aspirational society is coming up, our energy per capita consumption is increasing.
A Times Influence Initiative.